look at how he steps and look how I step. Watch how I run up ramps and he stumbles down ramps, okay? Come on.
To date, the White House has avoided calling the situation at the border a crisis.
We recognize this is a big problem. We recognize this is a problem. It's a complicated problem.
Joining us, we're going to begin with a humanitarian crisis on the southern border that is growing larger and more dire by the day. Tonight, we have got the stunning new numbers. Sources tell CBS News more than 13,000 migrant children who entered the country without their parents are now in U.S. custody.
All right. Since the Biden administration took office, thousands of people have been released into the border communities. According to media reporting, since January 25th, 2021, at least 108 migrants tested positive for COVID-19 after being released into Brownsville, Texas community, where they proceeded to travel to cities throughout the United States. The mayor of Yuma, Arizona, told reporters that migrants are not being tested for COVID-19 before being released into his community, despite assertions made by the administration. And I just heard what you said.
The situations of which you spoke are precisely the situations that I provided in my answer to your prior question. There were instances in which individuals were released.
This significant surge coming after President Biden ended Donald Trump's so-called Remain in Mexico policy, requiring asylum seekers to wait there for their court proceedings. Since then, many of those tent cities along the Mexican border have emptied out as people start streaming in. This father, who asked that we not show his face, traveled to Mexico from Brazil with his wife and 3 young kids before crossing the border. Would you have tried to do this when Donald Trump was president?
Definitely not. Definitely. We had the chance, the same violence that is going on today was there last year. We used to watch the news, and I definitely won't do this.
So did you come here because Joe Biden was elected president?
Basically.
That they would be partners in dealing with the crisis on the border.
Ha, gotcha.
Excellent. I want to thank Linda Ronstadt for allowing us to make this movie, and Rob Friedman, Jeffrey Epstein.
Cortina may be one of only a handful of places to host the Alpine World Championships, but it's similar to every resort in Europe and across North America in one respect: the fact that almost everyone in these beautiful places is white. That is certainly the case here in Larks, and has been at all of the places that I've been fortunate enough to visit through competition and now work.
When you're in the majority, you fit in. So why would you question it? It's only by looking at this through a different lens you start to realise that these environments perhaps aren't as equal, as accessible, or as welcoming as we'd like to think.
The sweeping vistas stir the soul. Wildlife and waterfalls awaken a sense of wonder. The American wilderness, a playground for old and for young, and overwhelmingly white.
It's time we rename that building after somebody who deserves it.
I couldn't agree more, Congressman. And considering this long overdue moment of racial justice reckoning we're navigating as a nation, changing the name of our premier law enforcement agency so that it doesn't honor a racist tyrant who trampled civil liberties, I don't know, seems like a pretty logical step to me. Now, we could spend hours discussing Hoover's documented misogyny, homophobia, and spinelessness when it came to policing the mafia, or we can step into 2021 and rededicate the building to someone deserving. I've got it. How about the Stacey Abrams building?
And in the week that the woman, Sarah Everard, was abducted and we suppose killed because remains have been found in a woodland in Kent, I would argue that at the next opportunity for any bill that's appropriate, I might actually put in an amendment to create a curfew for men on the streets after 6 p.m., which I feel would make women a lot safer.
Now, when President Harris and I took a virtual tour of a vaccination center in Arizona not long ago, one of the nurses on that tour, injecting people, giving vaccinations, said that each shot was like administering a dose of hope.
Good afternoon. Yeah, when I'm talking to the TV camera, I'm not going to wear a mask, and all of us have been immunized. So you're welcome to step away if you like. The whole point of a vaccine, CDC guidance, is what we're following.
So Dana Nessel is the Attorney General of Michigan. As the state's chief law enforcement officer, you'd think she would be very concerned about all those people getting murdered in her state, but she's not concerned. Nor has Nessel bothered to investigate her governor, Gretchen Whitmer, who, like Andrew Cuomo, is responsible for the deaths of so many nursing home residents from COVID. Gretchen Whitmer is Dana Nessel's political ally, so she's getting a pass completely. Dana Nessel has better things to do than stop murders or figure out why elderly people are dying. She has instead marshaled the full force of the state to crush a single disobedient restaurant owner, a Polish immigrant called Marlena Pawlos-Hackney, whom we've had on the show. Pawlos-Hackney's crime was disobeying state corona regulations, so last week Nessel had her handcuffed and arrested in a sting operation as she drove to work. Keep in mind that there is no proof that Pawlos-Hackney is responsible for a single COVID infection. Not one, no proof. But Dana Nessel sent her to jail anyway, and then issued a highly self-righteous press release bragging that she did it. Pawlos-Hackney was released from jail yesterday, but only because officials determined that her highly dangerous restaurant had been completely closed down. It's hard to imagine a more disproportionate response than this, but for those who've watched Dana Nessel for the past 2 years, it's not surprising. Dana Nessel is out of control. She's an ideologue. She cares only about partisan advantage. She should be impeached by the Michigan legislature for her many abuses of power. She's that corrupt. But she's also a bit of a dim bulb, not a super genius. And that's why when she was asked why she put Marlena Pawlos-Hackney in jail, Nessel actually admitted the real reason. She didn't make up some fake legal principle. She said straightforwardly that Marlena Pawlos-Hackney had dared to come on this show at 8 p.m. and complain about her. That's no longer allowed. And to compound the offense, Pawlos-Hackney tried to raise money for her own legal defense. And that, too, is now a crime in Dana Nessel's Michigan.
The NRA tried to tweet out today thinking they were dropping the mic, tweeting out the text of the Second Amendment. The text of the Second Amendment includes the words well-regulated, and it talks about militias. It is irrelevant to gun reform from what is being talked about in places like in Congress, in the United States Senate, and in the House.
Read the words. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Sure, you need an organized military force to defend your country, but the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the people, in contrast with the militia. It doesn't say the right of the militia to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It says the right of the people. Now, why the word people? Because the people who wrote this had just fought a war for 2 years against a tyrannical state militia. They knew the time might come when they'd have to do that again. So they made the possession of weapons a right that the militia could never take away. Now, gun control advocates say the phrasing is clumsy, and the comma separating the state from the people is just a pause to get your breath. Strange, they can't seem to point out any other places where those hack framers up the wording.
All right, just on the question I asked, why would that bill removing dead people from the voter rolls based on Social Security information be voter suppression?
Because there are frequently errors in the lists that are used in Social Security and other.
So your view would be the federal government is not capable of telling the state which Social Security recipients died and no longer get a check. So we should turn the entire election over to a federal structure.
Fail to account for white supremacy and veganism, you get white veganism.
We must address the role of white supremacy and the oppression it creates, no matter if we are vegan or not.
White veganism focuses solely on animal liberation while ignoring the context of colonization and imperialism and how all of this impacts all living beings and the planet.
Not all white people vegans are white vegans.
Our veganism must be intersectional, accessible, anti-racist, anti-imperialist, and decolonized.
Breaking tonight, just a few minutes ago, a Tennessee newspaper reporter has posted an image showing White House climate czar John Kerry on a commercial airlines flight, American Airlines, without a mask. The image is said to be from today on an American Airlines flight from Boston to Washington. Fox News has confirmed the photo's authenticity with the passenger who took it. American Airlines says on Twitter, masks are required on board our aircraft, and we are looking into this. Fox News has reached out to Kerry and the White House for comment.
Now we're going to get down to business here, and Ron, who am I turning this over to?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I think it's time for the press, our friends in the press, to leave, though.